All right, welcome to tonight's South Dakota District 25 Candidate Forum. Thank you all for coming. I'm Kim Serwick and I will be your moderator for this evening. This forum is sponsored by the Brandon Valley Area Chamber of Commerce and the Brandon Valley Journal. Tonight's forum provides our candidates an opportunity to publicly present their views, opinions, and qualifications for running for office. Although District 25 does not include the city of Brandon, it does encompass areas of the Brandon Valley School District, such as the Sioux Falls area around the Fred Assam Elementary, all the way to Valley Springs, up past Garrettson, around to Renner, Baltic, and Del Rapids. Our candidates this evening include, what do we got? Let's see here if I can remember where I put all of you. Challenger for candidates for Senate. Senate's on this side. The House is on this side. We've got Challenger Brian Worth. We've got incumbent Chris Langer and Challenger Peter Klebanoff on the end there. And for candidates for House, BJ Motley, Challenger here. Incumbent Dan Allers, Challenger John Hansen, and incumbent Tom Pischke. So thank you guys all so much for coming. This is the entire group. So thank you guys for coming down to be with us tonight. So tonight's format will proceed as follows. First, each of our candidates will be allowed up to a 2-minute introduction statement. We have a timekeeper seated here tonight, and that will limit candidates' responses to 2 minutes per question. After opening remarks in rotating order, the candidates will then respond to a series of questions prepared by the Chamber and the Journal. We will then open the questioning to the floor with the same time limitations for responses. All questions must be in written form. Please feel free to grab a note card from the back table and write a question down and give it to Jill over here at the side table if you so inclined have a question. And then at the end of that, finally, we will allow up to another 2 minutes for each candidate to give their closing statement. I'd also like to announce that this forum will be broadcast on Alliance Communications local channel at 6 p.m. on Saturday, October 20th, and Sunday, October 21st, 6 p.m. again. The video will also be posted on the Brandon Valley Chamber's YouTube channel as well, so be looking for that. So, without further ado, let's start these opening statements. Where do we want to start? Let's start all the way down here with Tom.
Thank you, Kim. I'm Representative Tom Pischke. I'm running for re-election. I have lived in Del Rapids for the last 13 years, and as living in Dells, I've worked at a couple places in Sioux Falls. I've worked at Citibank for 8 years, multiple roles. I started off in customer service and then worked my way up into as a computer programmer. And now for the last 5 years, almost 6, I've been at eSurance as a system quality analyst. I'm a 4th generation South Dakotan. I've lived here my entire life. Never plan on leaving. I feel it's the greatest place on earth, so no reason to leave. And run for re-election. Just hopefully I can have your support in the District 25. So thank you.
All right, we'll move to John Hansen.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for being here, and thanks for hosting us. My name's John Hansen. I'm from Del Rapids. I think that's going to be a common theme tonight. I live in Dells with my wife Sheila, and we have 4 kids, 7, 5, 2, and 1 on the way. Our 4th will be here in March, so we're pretty excited about that. Life is good. I work in Sioux Falls as a lawyer, Redstone Law Firm. I've served in the legislature before. I was elected in 2010, re-elected in 2012. During my time in the legislature, I served in some leadership capacities as the House Majority Whip. I was also the Vice Chairman of the House Judiciary Committee. Passed a number of bills that are now law today. So this ain't my first rodeo, so to speak. I've been around the block a time or two, and maybe that means I should have known better than to get back into politics. But you know what? It's important. Our little towns are important. Our community is important. Our state's important. So that's why I'm here.
All right, Dan Allers.
I'm Dan Allers from Del Rapids. I've been a small business owner there for 19 years. I lived there with my wife of 20 years, Amy, and our 2 kids, Jackson and Aaron. I've also currently the one of the two representatives for District 25. I serve on the Governor's Task Force for Mental Illness, the South Dakota Retirement Laws Committee, and I also serve on Joint and House Appropriations. And I do it because I really enjoy public service. I've been involved with our Chamber of Commerce for nearly a dozen years, our before and after school program for 12 years, and our community foundation for 8. And being a member of the legislature is just another extension of giving back and public service. So, and it's been an honor to be able to serve District 25.
Thank you. BJ Motley.
Okay, good afternoon. I'm BJ Motley. I'm currently from Sioux Falls. I'm the president of UFCW Local 304A Union. I represent the people of Smithfield Foods, John Morrell, the Americold Distribution Center, United Vending Services, and the Sioux Falls School District's Child Nutrition. I came to South Dakota in 1982 to attend the University of Sioux Falls on a football scholarship, and I graduated with a BA degree in health and physical education. I volunteered a lot of my time through the years in youth sports. I coached youth football, youth wrestling, and youth softball. And I like to say I'm proud to call South Dakota, my home.
Right, thank you very much. And we'll go right over here to Brian Worth.
Hi, thanks for having me. Thanks for hosting. My name is Brian Worth. I'm a first-time candidate. I'm originally from Hurley, South Dakota, which is a little southwest of here. A small community of small business owners, farmers, nurses, hardworking South Dakotans. I actually went to USD and got degrees in political science and criminal justice. Actually, the reason I'm running specifically is because of the repeal of the Mission Initiative Measure 22. The election, I actually made a voting guide for everyone at work and discussed a lot of the issues with people at work. And when that got repealed, I started to pay a little more attention to what was happening, locally in my government. So I've mostly been, concerned with what's happening federally. But I actually registered as a independent about 10 years ago, less than, after the 2008 financial bailout. I didn't feel like any party represented me, my family, or my friends, or the people of this state. And so when I learned that our incumbent for the Senate seat here was running unopposed, I started knocking on doors to run as an independent and try and give people a progressive to vote for. Thanks.
All right, and Chris Langer.
Thank you, Kim, for having us and for everyone that came out tonight to listen to us. I'm Senator Chris Langer. I'm also from Del Rapids. I live there with my husband, and I have 2 grown boys that are also in Del Rapids, and I'm a grandma. I have a 9-month-old little granddaughter that I absolutely adore. I served you in the House for 3 years. The governor appointed me. I served 1 year, and then actually to replace John Hanson, who went to law school. So he's hoping to get back. I've been in the Senate the last couple years. I serve on Senate Judiciary. I chair local government, and I'm also on state affairs. I'm a majority whip, so that means I've been in leadership for the last few years, elected by my colleagues, so that's a fun thing to do. I'm also on the a drug court advisory task force that the Chief Justice has placed me on. So born and raised on a family farm north of Brookings, but I've been in Del Rapids for nearly 20 years and definitely have enjoyed serving you and hope to continue to go back and work hard to represent the people of District 25. So thank you.
And last but not least, Peter.
Hopefully not least. I'm not from Del Rapids. I'm from suburban Baltic. My wife has taken over the old JC camp, and we're renovating it into South Dakota's first artist retreat. I've been in South Dakota 22 years, I think. Came here with LodgeNet for a job, worked there 17 years as their top salesperson. I am now a consultant to the hospitality business. I'm a Minnehaha County Reserve police officer So I take service pretty seriously, and I also take ethics pretty seriously. And similar to Brian, the IM-22 repeal set me off, in part because I worked on collecting the signatures to put it on the ballot. And it just irks me that the GOP represents about 48% of the population, but 85% of the legislature and 100% of the constitutional offices. And I think the reason there are so many initiated measures being put out for the voters' consideration is because the legislature's not doing what the people want them to do. So I would like to change that and be in a position to help make things that the people actually want and need happen.
All right, well, thank you all very much for your introductions. We are going to go straight here to prepared questions. Again, you're limited to 2 minutes or less for your answers. The very first prepared question, and we will start with John Hanson this time, is why are you seeking election and what are your top priorities?
Well, great question. First of all, I'm running for office because I feel like it's calling on my life to be doing it. So that's number one, really. But, I think I've got the experience, I think I've got the right judgment, and I think I've got the right principles it takes to be an effective advocate and to better our community and to better our state. And when it comes to those principles and, what my top priorities are, it's funny because there's so many issues that come before the legislative session every year. But a few common themes for me are low taxes. I'm always guarded when it comes to tax increases. I want to keep taxes low for everybody. I believe that people know better how to spend their own money than does the state government. And I think that we as individuals have to live within our own means, and so the state government should have to live within its own means too. So I'm going to work to keep taxes low. It's always been important to me to make sure to protect life at all stages, from conception all the way to natural death. That includes our seniors and our nursing homes, so that's important. I want to foster better education, and that includes all education in South Dakota, K through 12, colleges. And that means having a solid public education system. That also means helping out our non-public education systems and our homeschoolers. We need to make sure we have good education across the spectrum. And finally, I want to make sure that we have openness in our government. I want to make sure that you guys and that everybody knows what's happening in their government. So that means you have access to meetings, you have access to financial records. That's critical. So those 4 things will be a top priority for me.
All right, thank you. Dan?
Thank you. And as I said in my opening remarks, I really enjoy public service. It's kind of an extension of being a small business owner. It's all about helping the customer and helping them find what they need and not do more than what you need. And working in government is very similar. You're there to help people work their way through a process. You're there to help if they have issues with services that are being provided. And I enjoy doing that. I really do. That's probably the biggest reason that I ran for office, is I felt like I could make a difference. And that shows as part of my top priorities too. A lot of the things I've worked on the last 2 years have been constituent issues. And somebody comes to you and they have a problem, or they have a question about how something's working or not working for them, just being able to help them solve that problem is very rewarding. We did it, I think the big thing for me is doing it in a bipartisan manner. A lot of the stuff that we try to do, it's not Republican, it's not Democrat, it's South Dakotan. And we've done some good things the last couple of years. As a member of Appropriations, it's also about taking those limited resources and maximizing what we get out of it, improving education, helping Medicaid recipients, and also providing a climate for good economic development, affordable housing, and making sure that we address the needs of our businesses so that we have the properly educated workforce that can do the jobs that are needed here in South Dakota.
All right. Thank you. And now BJ.
Okay, why I'm seeking election is because I just want to be the voice for the working class people. I've listened to, previous candidates speak at our union meetings on how they're going to fight for our issues and our concerns. And when they get elected, they seem to forget about us. And I chose to get off the sidelines and be the voice for the people. And my priorities are to fight for more education programs such as early child start, daycare assistance, better wages and affordable health care, and job safety and security. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Brian.
I'm running, I believe our government should be more open and honest. It should be held accountable to its constituents. Actually, I've been a financial crimes investigator for the past 12 years. I'm actually a certified financial crimes specialist. I deal with issues like money laundering, tax refund fraud, unemployment fraud, even human trafficking on a daily basis. I want to make sure that if we get to pass Amendment W, which is IM 22 new version, that we don't monkey with it and that we make sure it's implemented correctly. And also I would like to work on how to help our rural communities with their infrastructure costs. It's important that for economic development, for our towns to have good roads, clean water, access to high-speed internet. That's what helps drive innovation. That's what helps drive new businesses, new ideas. Thanks.
All right, thank you. And Chris.
Thank you. I guess my main reason for going back to Pierre is you get a lot more knowledgeable about how to do things, and I'm proud of some of the legislation that I have been able to pass. As Dan stated, when constituents come to you and they have problems and you're able to solve those are really make you feel very good, and that your job does matter. I also sit on the an interim study for mental health this summer. In fact, I'm on my way to Pierre when we leave here, and we really have some concerning statistics as far as our suicide rates. And so we really need to look at what we need to do to get better as a state. I think we need to, it starts at home and at schools, but we need to provide better access to mental health. So that will definitely be a top priority for me. I also sit on the Judiciary Committee, and I have a big passion for trying to rehabilitate people that may have fallen off, and they've gone through some different programs. Last session I was able to pass an expungement bill that helps if you are able to complete a diversionary program and then stay clean for another year, that your record is expunged. We do have that for juveniles, but we did not have that for anybody over the age of 18. And as we know, our children tend to not grow up even as quickly. I think, we can be in our parents' insurance till they're 26, but once that magic 18 number hits, they're considered adults in the eyes of the law. So I think we need to look at some different changes there. We also need to make sure that our government is working efficiently and that we are using your tax dollars to the best of our abilities. So those are some of the reasons that I really want to get back to work for you in Pierre. We also, I think there's a question too about workforce development and making sure we have enough workforce to fill all of the jobs that we have, and our Medicaid providers definitely need some assistance in the ways of as hard as they work, and we need to find some more funding for them as well. So I thank you, and I look forward to serving you.
All right, thank you very much. Peter, same question.
Being a past salesman, I have a presentation. I'm running for office because we are 41st out of 51 in spending per student, 49th out of 50 in teacher pay, 28th out of 51 in graduation rate, 40th out of 51 in AP test scores, 47th in ethics, goes back to W and IM 22, and 32nd in voter turnout. We're not getting the participation we need, and we're not getting the results we need. We appear to be in a race to the bottom, and that needs to stop. I have a 3-foot tall, 33-pound reason for making sure we turn things around, my grandson, and things just need to be different. The current administration thinks there's no such thing as climate change. Well, even if you want to believe that, which is foolish, why not sell the rest of the world the stuff they need who does believe in climate change? We have, I believe, 4 wind turbine plants in South Dakota. Let's go global. The rest of the world thinks there's climate change. Let's make money off of it. There are ways to better operate that will be better for everybody. And I think we need some clever and creative people in Pierre to figure that out and to fix these problems. Thank you.
All right, Tom.
Thank you for the question, Kim. I'm running for re-election because I want to give the people of District 25 a conservative voice. Not only that, but I want also the people of 25 to know that I'm not a politician in any which way or form. I am a guy who I work 8 to 5, I grind it out. I know what it's like to make sure you have to pay your mortgage every day. I know what it's like to have to get a second and third job so you can pay off your vehicle. I understand those kind of things, and I want to portray to the people that I can relate to the people of 25 that have to go through the same things. Important issues to me. Very pro-life. I believe in the sanctity of life, not only at conception, but also at the end of your life. I think that you should have a natural death. Low tax. I think that our government should be limited, and I believe that the people of District 25 and the people of South Dakota can spend their money more wisely than the government can. I believe in government transparency. I think that we should have more open government. We should have more things online for people to look at, more financial reports. I believe in defending our Second Amendment and other liberties that come in our U.S. Constitution. I think that we have a very good standard of life here in South Dakota, and I want to make sure that we continue to go down that path of having a great standard of life. And yeah, those are the things. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Our second prepared question of 3 is, and we'll start with Dan on this one. What is your stance on legislation that would allow local municipalities the option through local elections to collect an extra penny sales tax for the purpose of funding specific capital projects?
Thank you for the question. You know, this is really a local control issue. In the end, I think that, you know, depending on how the legislation's written and the guarantees that once the project's done that the tax goes away, I would like to take a look at it, but the concept I'm all right with. But I do want to make sure that you know, there's a trust issue that voters have with legislators. We promise that taxes go for something, and then, you know, it's voted on, and then we change it. And the last thing I want is to continue to perpetuate that image of lawmakers at any level.
All right, thank you. BJ.
Yeah, my answer is simple. I don't like to comment on taxes because I don't like taxes. But if the money was used for what it's supposed to be, like for educational, you know, programs and programs to help juvenile, you know, drug addictions, I can support that. Thank you.
All right. Brian, same question. Let me repeat it for you as well, since it's so long. I want to make sure everyone remembers what we're referring to here. So what is your stance on legislation that would allow local municipalities the option through local elections to collect an extra penny sales tax for the purpose of funding specific capital projects?
I personally would support local municipality being able to raise its taxes if it decides to fund its capital projects, because the most important thing for a town is to invest in its infrastructure. And if the state's not going to step in and help them pay for that, and the federal government's not going to step in and help them pay for that, then they got to do it on their own. So there's a lot of limits placed on cities on how they can raise taxes. They usually need permission from the state legislature. We can do things better. We can invest in infrastructure. And like I said, if the state's not going to come in and help, and the federal government's not going to help, the city has to do it. Sales tax tend to be a regressive tax and fall on the people that are least able to afford it, but sometimes it's easier to get a sales tax passed than an increase in property taxes. Nobody likes property taxes. Nobody likes income taxes. We like our checks to be bigger. We want more money in our control, but At the end of the day, as a community, as a government, we have to step in and provide services that we all agree that we want. We want better roads, we want better infrastructure, we want clean water. We want everybody to have medical care without going bankrupt. These are all things we can do. We just have to decide to do it and vote for people who support that. Thank you.
All right. Chris, same question.
I guess on this particular question, thanks for the question. I am a bit leery. I agree with Representative Allers that kind of depends on how it's worded. I also have some concerns as far as each city council likes to have the something that their council did and that they stood for. I would rather see it come from economic development to work within the city to grow that tax base and to make sure that the taxes go for the essential needs of the city. Obviously, there's always extenuating circumstances around that, but with all the property tax or the school opt-outs, and I know the county is going to want something for the jail. There's always concerns about our citizens are getting taxed every way they go. So it would have to be a special circumstance. I would just be leery to just say yes.
All right, and Peter, same question. What is your stance on legislation that would allow local municipalities the option through local elections to collect an extra penny sales tax for the purpose of funding specific capital projects?
The devil is always in the detail, but the $190 million bond issue proved that the people understand what the needs of their community are and need to be able to deal with issues that arise. If it's a vote, the people get to decide if it's clearly defined. If nobody can cheat and screw around with the money and do something else with it, I think you need to let the people manage their communities.
All right, Tom.
I got the question, Kim. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I absolutely believe in local control, but the deal with this, I guess I would be very hesitant to support such a legislation like this. Just basically, it would have to be very finely crafted and make sure that, because you can't be continuously taxing on your citizens over and over. Eventually, there comes to a breaking point that they just don't want to be taxed anymore. So, if we had legislation where maybe you have a cooling off period where you can't do it for so many years, and there has to be limits on how long you would do it, that's maybe something that I would consider. But for the most part, I would be against such legislation. I also, from experience of being in the legislature a little bit, I also have learned that since municipalities can tax their citizens, that extra two pennies or 2%, that extra 1% is actually supposed to go towards infrastructure in your community. So we could say that we've already given the municipalities that option to do that already, but now we're asking for another penny. And so once you open up, you turn on that faucet just a little bit more, next year, now we want to turn the faucet on a little bit more, and sometimes you just have to say no. So that's where I would be on that.
All right, John.
Thank you. Some good answers up here. As Peter mentioned, the devil is sort of in the details when it comes to these sorts of things. And, maybe if there was a high vote threshold that was required. But as I indicated in my prior remarks, I'm pretty opposed to raising taxes. And as Brian mentioned, when it comes to the sales tax specifically, the sales tax is regressive in nature. And, it sounds like a penny's not a big deal, but that can raise a lot of money. And it can raise a lot of money from individual families, and that's a big deal. My wife, Sheila, who's just got here not that long ago. Hey, Sheila. She was over in Valley Springs the other day, and she came across these two little girls, and they were having a lemonade stand. And so she goes up and talks to the girls and buys some lemonade, and they're just making small talk, and sort of as she's walking away, she said, "So what are you planning on doing with the money that you made selling lemonade?" And one of the girls replied and said, "I'm going to help my dad pay the electric bill." So there's people out there that's struggling to pay for groceries and their bills, and I don't want to put a regressive tax on them. I don't want to charge them 7.5% on their groceries. So for the most part, I'm against raising the sales tax, including when we let the municipalities do it themselves.
All right, our third and last prepared question. We will start with BJ. One of the biggest challenges South Dakota faces is having enough people with the right skills and capabilities for South Dakota jobs. What do you believe are the most effective strategies to ensure a properly trained workforce?
Well, like I said, being a unionist for 30 years, I believe that we need to have more programs set up for the diversity we face in this state to help immigrants understand our system, more language adequate programs to make them feel, welcome and comfortable in pursuing a job, to fit in the workplace, and to not be afraid of, different jobs, hands-on training. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Brian, same question.
To get the right people for the right jobs with the right skills, you have to have the job, and then you have to pay them enough to do it. If you offer a job and you offer them a reasonable wage, they'll find out the skills to do it. You don't have to force people to go to vocational school to get specific training to do a specific job. That's just a way to shift the training cost of a job to the employee and instead of the employer. So my job I do personally right now as a financial crimes investigator, we do it through a mentorship program. Every new investigator we hire, we make sure they have, at least the base skills, and then we one-on-one teach them how to identify money laundering and fraud. That stuff's always changing every year. We got to learn, what's the new scam, what's the new issue facing, who's trying to take grandma's money. I mean, my grandparents get, well, this is off topic, but so I just think the job will attract the right worker. I don't think it's necessarily our job to force people to go to a specific school to get a specific job. Thanks.
All right, Chris, what do you believe are the most effective strategies to ensure a properly trained workforce?
I think we can do a lot better job at engaging our biggest employers and employers that are in need of skilled workers to educate our young people on the different avenues that they can take to get those jobs. We've got some technical skilled jobs that those kids will come out of technical school and be making $70,000 or $80,000 a year. So I think it really is reframing our structure of thinking of that college is the only way to go in some families. That to understand that technical school isn't a bad way to go either, and really engaging those businesses that are missing, they're missing welders or they're missing whatever it may be, that we're seeing where that demand is. I know the governor has worked hard on having a lot of different conferences and speakers come in to address this issue, and I think we're making some progress, but obviously we need to continue working hard at that from a grassroots level, and letting our students know that there are different options for them out there, and getting that hands-on opportunity to maybe go into that job, into that workplace, and see what their job actually would be, and then see their opportunity for growth also. So I think it's just kind of reframing our thought process, as far as we've got a lot of youth that tell us they're going to go to college, but they don't really know what they're going to go to college for. And so they come out of that university with big bills and a four-year degree, but they don't necessarily have a job set for them. And so I think it's our job to try to reframe that idea and let them know that let's figure out what your job is going to be, and really figure out where demands are.
Thank you. Peter.
I'm torn by this one. I like the fact that the state doesn't have a lot of people in it, but but we need more people to fill a lot of these jobs, and they need to be properly educated. I believe apprenticeship programs are probably a wise thing to do. I think we have some tremendous trade schools. As Chris mentioned, we need to help people understand that there are options besides college. For some people, it's a better fit to go to a tech school. I think the businesses need to be involved. When I worked for LodgeNet, we hired the entire graduating class of Mitchell Votech every year out of the cable TV section. And they just knew going in that when they finished the program, they had a job. And it was a good paying job, and they were well treated, good benefits, etc. And I think there is a way to do the public-private arrangement to make sure that we can create these available jobs. But we need more people in the state to take them. I mean, the problem is that we're growing nicely. we can always grow more, but the state's doing well, and we need to bring in people. I think the state needs a public relations campaign because everybody thinks of it as a frozen tundra and a flyover state. And I think when people get here, they go, ooh, this is nice. And, I don't go outside in Boston during the winter either, so, having to run to my car because it's 30 below isn't that much different from zero. So, and I think we really could boost the image of the state to bring in the businesses and the personnel to help fill them if people had a better impression of the state. But on the other hand, I'm not sure I want all those people, but you have to. You got to grow. All right.
All right, thank you. Tom, I'm going to reread the question so everyone remembers what it was. One of the biggest challenges South Dakota faces is having enough people with the right skills and capabilities for South Dakota jobs. What do you believe are the most effective strategies to ensure a properly trained workforce?
Thanks for repeating the question, Kim.
You're welcome.
I think that Senator Langer and Peter are on the right track over there. I really like what Chris is saying about getting people out of the mindset that you have to go to a four-year university. There's so many jobs out there where you don't necessarily have to do that. I mean, you could come out of high school and get a lot of the jobs that are available right now. And also, I think apprenticeships, and Christy Noem has really hit up nail on the head on that too, and she's campaigned on this, is that we need to have more apprenticeship programs. We need to get people involved in getting into the workforce and going to school at the same time, getting credit for both. And I'm a big proponent of that as well. I also think that private companies, we should be trying to get companies involved more, even at the high school level, inviting them in. Trail King, for example, they're always in need of welders. Get them to come into Mitchell High School or high schools that are in that area and say, hey, we will pay for your training to become a welder if you agree to stay at Trail King for a lot of number of years. We should be encouraging that kind of thing, and that way we could fill these openings and work on our workforce development in that manner as well. So, thanks.
All right, John.
Thank you very much. I agree that apprenticeships are important. We need to foster them. Along with that comes lowering some of the barriers of entry into these industries because of a lot of the licensing requirements associated with performing a specific task in a specific industry require some level of education. And if we can foster more apprenticeship-like programs, I think we'll do well to better our workforce. I also think it starts with education, and that starts at the K-12 area and all the way up through technical and college education. And when I talk about areas in which I see that we can improve, I don't mean it as a criticism, I just am identifying areas. So, our K through 12 systems, for example, 1/3 of our graduates, when they go to college, require some sort of remedial math or remedial education. And so we can do better there because when we're set back in education, then we're set back in our workforce as well. So I also think when it comes to technical schools, I think we can do a little bit better to work with industry so that when you come out of a technical school 2-year program that you are equipped and you're job ready day one. And I've heard some feedback out there talking with a few folks that that's not exactly the case. And so if we can more closely match up the workforce requirements with what we're teaching in technical schools, I think that'll go a long way to make our workforce better and more prepared to meet the demands of business and industry in our state.
Thank you. And Dan.
Well, this is a tough one. It's a very complicated issue, but I think you're going to hear a reoccurring theme here. I think a lot of it begins with education. And it starts at the early stages in K through 12. I spend time volunteering in our schools as well as a substitute teacher. And I can tell you that it is important that we do a better job of getting our schools and our teachers the resources they need to help provide the best possible education and opportunities for our students. Another part of it is CTE programs. We need to make sure that we're providing funding for those career and technical education programs in our schools, because those are also part of the early engagement that we continue to talk about with our employers. As a member of the Western Interstate Compact for Higher Education, I represent South Dakota for the legislature there. We look at these issues all the time, and one of the things that's happening is They're going, in the next 6 to 10 years, we're looking at fewer and fewer graduates, fewer and fewer, because there are fewer and fewer students. And we will be competing for those students across the country. So making our degrees stackable at our tech schools, at our universities, so that you can move within a profession relatively easy. You can go from a tech degree to a four-year degree relatively easy. Those are the types of things that we're currently working on, and I will continue to push. Military training credits for our vets. That is something that I've been working with the Board of Regents to ensure that those members of the military that have training that can qualify for college credits, that they get those credits. And finally, a needs-based scholarship. South Dakota is the worst in the region. We are only providing $11 for every Pell-eligible student in South Dakota, while our neighbors are between $1,000 and $2,000.
All right, thank you. That concludes our prepared questions. We do have one ballot measure question. We will start with Brian on this one. What are your positions on the following ballot questions? Again, I've only got one here. We're talking about initiated measure 25, which is an initiated measure increasing the state tobacco tax and creating a post-secondary technical institute fund for the purposes of lowering student tuition and providing financial support to the state post-secondary technical institutes.
I personally, I love the initiative measure process. I think it's a great way for our citizens to participate in our state government and help enact laws that will help them. This was not citizen. This was put in by the legislature. I'm also going to personally vote no on this because it's a tax on a shrinking tax base. Less and less people smoke every year, and it also is a minority. So you're taxing a shrinking tax base that is also just a minority, and I prefer taxes be everybody pay their fair share. Thanks.
All right, Chris, your take on initiated measure 25.
I am not a fan of Initiative 25 either. I guess my biggest reason is that there's going to be a child that's going to suffer from this is my worry. When you're addicted to tobacco, just because the price goes up doesn't mean that you're going to be able to quit smoking. So just as John alluded to with the little girl helping her parents pay their electrical bill, they're not going to be able to quit smoking, and it is $1 a pack more. It's not a small amount. So it is a big increase in tax, and although the legislature did not put it on, but it did come from a former legislator. I don't think this is the best or the most ideal way to raise money for technical schools. Obviously, we do need to figure out a way to get our tuition lowered there if possible, but I will be opposing it.
All right, thank you. Peter.
Love the goal, hate the method. Normally, I would be in favor of anything that the tobacco industry is against, and I'm a smoker. But as Brian mentioned, it's a declining revenue source. You start getting the schools used to a revenue source that's going to be diminishing over time, and you're creating a bigger problem. We definitely need to solve the problem of lowering tuition, providing better financial support. This is a terrible way to do it. I've already voted, and I voted no.
All right, Tom, what is your position on initiated measure 25? I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it increases the state tobacco tax for the purpose of lowering student tuition and providing financial support for the state post-secondary technical institutes.
Thank you for reading the question for me, Kim. Really appreciate that. I'm also opposed to initiated measure 25. Simply you could just say it's increasing the size of government. So I'm opposed to that in general. But great points over on the other side of the table. Don't agree with a declining tax base for schools. You're hurting people who are addicted, like Chris mentioned. And I just don't see it's not related. I mean, you're taxing cigarettes to pay for technical schools. I don't understand why that legislator thought this was a good idea, and he tried to get it through the legislature, and it failed in the House, and I voted against it there too. So it was an initiated measure. It's not by the legislature. So, but yeah, I will be voting no on this as well. So I'm opposed to it.
John?
Well, wow, I mean, look at this. It's like bipartisan opposition. Not something you see every day, especially when you tune in your local newscast or your national newscast, particularly. But I agree with a lot of what's been said. I'm opposed to this measure for a lot of the reasons already been stated. And, you know, you can probably guess by now that I'm generally opposed to higher taxes. But also, you know, what this does in a practical sense is if you think about it from the mindset of a policymaker or just even as a citizen of the state or whatever, it doesn't matter. What we're doing is we're taking a large amount of money and we're putting it towards education. And so when we're doing that, there's something in your mind that says, okay, well, we've just put a lot of money towards education. Now we better start looking at protecting the public or maybe spending more money on taking care of our elderly or low income or whatever. So when we do that, we set aside funding more education. And so that could mean that our K-12 schools don't see some additional revenue. Of course, our K-12 schools aren't going to see any revenue out of this measure, nor will our universities. So, you know, for that reason and for just the general reason of being opposed to tax increases, I'm opposed to this measure.
All right, Dan, what is your position on initiated Measure 25? Increased state tobacco tax, purposes, lowering tuition for students, providing financial support to the state's post-secondary technical institutes. I can't make it any shorter.
Well, you know, the intent of this is good and is well meant, but once again, you're trying to fund an ongoing expense on a declining revenue stream, and that just doesn't work. It doesn't make good fiscal sense, and it's not related to the tax isn't related to the purpose for which the money is going to be spent. Already this year, revenues for the state are up $8 million in the first quarter. But the state tobacco tax is at a 6-year low. It's already $2 million less than what it was the previous fiscal year. So it doesn't, you wouldn't try to fund an ongoing expense with declining revenues. At some point, you're going to have some, if we were to pass this, at some point you're going to have ongoing expenses, and it's going to exceed what we're generating, and they're going to say we need more money for tech schools, and they're going to say, what did you do with that tax increase that you passed on cigarettes? It just doesn't make any sense. We have additional revenues coming in now. As of November 1st, the online sales tax will be a requirement for those online retailers. As of March 1st, the marketplace retailers will also have to start remitting. We will see additional revenues come in. It has been a priority of the members of our Appropriations Committee to put more money into education. I think you saw that this last year. Not only did we give an increase ongoing, we backfilled and gave additional money in the current fiscal year. So I hope to see that trend continue, and if I'm there, we will continue to work to fund higher education and tech schools.
All right, thank you. And BJ?
Yeah, I vote no on this also. Like I said earlier, you know, I don't like taxes because although, you know, they make it sound good, I just believe the money collected would be just, you know, used for not what it is intended for. Just go into the general fund or whatever, and, you know, like I said, it's not used for what it's supposed to be used for. You know, just like they said with the video lottery, they was using the money for education, and you know, it didn't go towards education. Mostly went, you know, back to the general fund. So, like I say, I vote no on 25 because I just don't, you know, believe it'll be used for what they intended for.
All right, thank you. That is our only valid question that we had asked about. We are now going to switch to the questions from the audience. Again, there are note cards in the back table. If you're interested in writing down a question, we will take them in written form. You just hand them to Jill, and Jill will get them up here, and we will ask the candidates your question. That said, we did have one submitted to us via email today. So we're going to start with Chris. And this question is, what is your stance on medical marijuana?
Well, that's an interesting question,
Right?
Kim. Well, I am kind of glad I get to go first. I sit on the Drug Court Advisory Task Force for the Chief Justice. Most South Dakotans probably don't know, but our Chief Justice is actually the president of all the nationwide Chief Justice Association. So it's been very interesting to learn from him. What he has told me is that he thought he was for medical marijuana or legalizing marijuana. In most of the states that it's happened, those chief justices wish they could turn back the clock because there are so many problems. So, I mean, obviously, I would hope that there's, I think we can find ways to get cannabis to our individuals that may need it without legalizing marijuana as a whole. I would be opposed to legalizing that.
All right. What is your stance, Peter, on medical marijuana?
I have a friend with MS, and it helps him tremendously. I think it is a shame that it's categorized with heroin and cocaine and other such things, and I think medical marijuana is a different thing than recreational marijuana. And I also think that the creation of a hemp industry, which could go along with that, has tremendous opportunity for growth in South Dakota. I think people who are gravely ill and sick and dying and in pain should have every opportunity to be comfortable and get better. And there is ample evidence that medical marijuana has useful purposes in efficacies in health. And I think we should not be one of 4 states that doesn't allow it.
All right. Tom, what is your stance on medical marijuana?
Well, I find what Senator Langer actually said to be very interesting. I'd like to see those statistics, but until then, I'm actually a proponent of medical marijuana. I think that there are people in pain that medical marijuana could help them, and I think that we should explore those options instead of going down the opioid avenue that we've kind of gone down. So I would like to see medical marijuana be researched more, and I'm very open to it.
All right. John?
Well, it is an interesting question, and I'd like to see if we're going to have medical marijuana, that it should be run through the same FDA approval processes as every other prescription drug on the market today, and that requires studies that show that it's effective, and clinical studies to that effect. And if that does come to South Dakota, then I also think it needs to be strictly regulated. I think in some of these other states where they've introduced medical marijuana, you've seen, people coming out of the woodwork with prescriptions. It's like everybody's sick with whatever disease. And I'm not saying that people are going to just come out and abuse the process, but I am saying that we would need to make sure that we heavily regulate that so that doctors don't overprescribe marijuana to people who don't actually need it. So I'm open to the idea so long as the studies show that it's effective and so long as it is run through the same approval procedures as every other drug.
All right. Dan, what is your stance on medical marijuana?
Well, my position on this continues to evolve. I'm getting, as I learn more about it, I'm getting more comfortable with the idea. I think what happens is there's a stigmatism behind it and a stereotype. I think that there seems to be benefits. The more information I read on it, the more studies I see, it can be an opportunity to help people not have to go on pain meds like opioids. And opioids is getting to be a bigger and bigger crisis all over the country, including South Dakota. I think the biggest challenge comes in how to regulate it, and I don't know that we've quite gotten there yet. And I continue to look for models that would help us get that product to the people that really need it, but not in a way that encourages the misuse of it. I think when I was traveling this summer on a fellowship in Kentucky, they talked about prohibition, and I was at a distillery. And when prohibition came around, you were allowed to have prescriptions for bourbon. and there were 600,000 people in Kentucky at that time, and there were over 1 million prescriptions for bourbon. So I think, you know, we don't want that kind of thing happening, and I'm just looking for that model, and if we can find that, then I think I'm there.
All right, thank you. BJ?
Yeah, like I said, I support Dan's answer, and I want to add a little to it. You know, like I said, it'll bring good revenue for our state. And, you know, like I said, I support it, and, you know, the profits also can be used for educational programs. That's why I think, you know, the revenue would be, you know, good for our state.
All right, thank you. And last but not least, Brian, what is your stance on medical marijuana?
I would support it. There are a lot of people in pain that could benefit from medical marijuana. We've kind of already proven that. There's other states that have proven that. If you do legalize marijuana at any level, especially in our state, I would want strong protections put in for our citizens and our farmers. I have a coworker and a friend who actually moved here from Denver, Colorado, and the cost of living got out of control after they passed recreational marijuana. A lot of people got rich quick, but then it quickly became only people with a lot of money were getting rich. And the cost of houses went up, and I would not want to see that happen to our state.
All right, thank you very much. Our next question from the audience is, what is your stance, and we'll be starting with Peter, what is your stance on Constitutional Amendment W? And as a definition, it is an initiated amendment to the South Dakota Constitution, changing campaign finance and lobbying laws, creating a government accountability board, and changing certain initiative and referendum provisions.
I am all for Amendment W. It is a redux of IM 22. Ethics measures have got to be put into place. An accountability board that is independent is essential. Dark money is a huge problem in politics throughout the land, including South Dakota. It is just insane. As I said, we rank 48th or 49th or something in ethics. It's just crazy that the only people who are against ethics are people who want to behave unethically. And I have no interest in behaving unethically. I have no interest in not seeing us put in place a policy and procedure to stop things like the Gear Up and the EB5 scandals and all that other stuff. It's crazy that we rank so low, and that there's so much potential for corruption, and in some cases actual corruption, and there's just no process in place to stop it and find it. So I'm all in favor of W. Like I say, I voted for it.
All right, Tom, what is your stance on Constitutional Amendment W?
Well, I'm opposed to W. A couple things. The W is basically targeted towards the legislative branch. Here's the thing about the legislative branch. We have elections every 2 years. If you think that your politician is corrupt, don't vote for them. Also, when we repealed IM 22 a couple years ago, we replaced that with multiple bills with bipartisan support. So to replace every part of IM 22 except for taxpayer funded campaigns. So I don't really think that's a great thing that your taxpayer money would be going to fund our campaigns up here. I think that's pretty wasteful when it could be going to paying teachers. So I'm opposed to that. I don't think it should be in the Constitution. And also, there's part of it that reads that this part of, if that were to be passed, it would be that part of the Constitution basically trumps any other part of the Constitution. I think that's very dangerous language and doesn't belong in our Constitution. So I'm opposed to it. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to kind of touch on it again so everyone remembers. What is your stance on Constitutional Amendment W? It is an initiated amendment to the South Dakota Constitution, changing campaign finance and lobbying laws, creating a government accountability board, and changing certain initiative and referendum provisions.
Well, as I indicated earlier, I'm all about openness in government. I'm all about transparency. And if anybody knows me, they know that ethics and morality are something that's just central to my life. I mean, I put a high priority on those things. It's just, it's important that we all think about how we act and make sure that we act in a moral and ethical way. But I am opposed to W for a number of reasons, some of which have already been touched on. First of all, I don't believe that W belongs in our Constitution. Our Constitution is a document that's intended to be a broad outline of authority, is sort of the structure of our state government. But as far as specifics, as far as appropriations, ongoing appropriations, as far as authority to hire staff, that doesn't belong in our Constitution. That belongs in statute. I also don't like the fact that W creates this this tribunal of unelected government agents with really no checks and balance on their power. And so I would prefer an accountability board that's accountable to the people, just like everything else, just like a legislature, just like our governor. So I don't like setting apart boards that aren't accountable to anybody else. We have a judiciary for that. It doesn't belong anywhere else. So for those reasons, I'm opposed to initiated or constitutional amendment W.
All right, Dan, your stance on constitutional amendment W.
Well, Amendment W is what we get when legislators don't listen to their constituents. It's the reason that we have a lot of ballot measures and constitutional amendments, because we're not listening to our constituents. Initiated Measure 22, I didn't agree with all of it, but the voters voted for it. It deserved a better hearing process than what it got through the legislature. And it was the feeling that the legislature was just disregarding it and throwing it out that made a lot of people angry and made a lot of our constituents angry. But putting it in the Constitution is absolutely the wrong place for it. It should be in statute. It should be a law. We do have an accountability board at this point. Representative Carnsoli worked very hard in a bipartisan manner to get something passed to give the people of South Dakota some protections and some guards against ethics violations, and to make sure that we as elected officials are held accountable. We do need to have some campaign finance reform. I would hope that if I'm back this next session that we can continue to work on stuff like that. But as you can see with Marcy's Law was another great example of something that should have been a law, not a constitutional amendment. And right away we had problems with it. We had to wait 2 years and put it back on a ballot in order to fix it. So there are proper places for this, and in the Constitution, W doesn't belong.
All right, BJ, let me rephrase this again. Constitutional Amendment W is an initiated amendment to the South Dakota Constitution, changing campaign finance and lobbying laws, creating a government accountability board, and changing certain initiative and referendum provisions. What is your stance?
No, my answer's shorter than what you just said. I don't have much to say on this amendment. I vote no on this amendment W, because it's too confusing and it's just too risky to put in the state constitution. So.
All right, Brian, same question.
I support Amendment W. Like Dan said, it's what you get when you repeal the will of the people. We're supposed to represent South Dakota's will. We're supposed to do what they want us to do. We're supposed to represent them. Repealing it, I think, was a mistake. That's all I have to say.
All right. Last but not least, Chris, Amendment W stance.
I oppose Amendment W too. I think for many of the reasons stated here, it does not belong in our Constitution. I think, we looked at some different things to even, I think the average person doesn't understand the important difference between an initiated measure and a constitutional amendment, and what a big difference that is. It's also quite a big growth of government, because we're going to have a paid board outside of the legislature to do this. We are all elected every 2 years. I will say since I've served, I've never seen anything intentionally unethical of any of my peers. I am proud to say that. We also do have the Government Accountability Board that is set up of volunteer retired judges. So we do have a very good system in place that was part of that repealing process, and those are volunteer judges that really aren't going to go on the backs of taxpayers as well. So I will be opposing it.
All right, thank you. And we have, I believe, just one more. If anyone else has any other questions, be sure to put them up. What are we, an hour, 5 minutes, and we have until 8 o'clock. So if you do have a question, we do have time to answer it. This question is, we're starting back over with Tom. Why are you different from everyone else as a candidate?
That's almost a loaded question. Well, I think I kind of prefaced that in my introduction. When we gave the pay increases last year, that I kind of prefaced in my floor speech at that point that I'm one of 3 people in the legislature that's, one, not independently wealthy, I don't own my own business, I'm not retired. I'm a person, I'm working 8 to 5, and I get time away from my employer. They graciously allow me to do that so that I can come out and serve the people of South Dakota to do so. So being just one of 105, I think that makes me different from a lot of candidates and a lot of other legislators. And I have an understanding of like I said, of what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck and what it would be like, what the fiscally impact it would be for tax increases and these fee increases that continuously get passed. So I think that sets me apart as a candidate and really allows me the ability to relate to the people of District 25 in South Dakota. Thanks.
All right, John, as a candidate, why are you different from everyone else?
Well, I think over the course of the last hour and 15 minutes, we've heard a little bit about the differences between us all. So I won't rehash those things. I just, I'll tell you, I'm a guy who tries to focus on my principles, and I try to hold to my faith. I try to hold to my principles. And I'm just up here, I guess this is going to turn into something that I think probably unifies us all, but, we're just up here trying to do what's right by our communities and by our state. And that's what's really important. So, you've heard the differences between us all, but when it really comes down to it, we all just want what's best for Dells and Baltic and Garrettson and all the towns and Sioux Falls and rural Brandon. And interestingly, I guess, I think more about what unifies us than I do about what makes us different. And I think that's the kind of person that you want as a leader in the legislature. Somebody who thinks about not dividing people, but about unifying people.
All right, Dan, as a candidate, why are you different from everyone else?
Well, just so Tom doesn't feel bad, I own a video store, so I'm not independently wealthy either. I think there's only 2 of us left in the state, so we're a bit of a dying breed. I think, and I don't know that this makes me a whole lot different than everyone, but I really focus when I go to Pierre. I'm there to listen to you guys. I'm there to serve you guys just as if you were a customer in my store. I'm there to listen to what your needs are and to try and fulfill that. And doing that really makes my job easy. It makes my job enjoyable because I get to work on the things that I know are going to make a difference for you. I don't have all the answers, but I spend a lot of time trying to find those answers so I can do my the best possible job for you. I just enjoy serving people, and that has been my mantra. My own priorities that I have, those things that I focus on often take a back seat. I think most of the legislation that I propose ends up in the end being stuff that comes from you, and that has been the joy of these last 2 years, is that I get to serve you. And when it comes down to it, that's probably the thing that I don't go to Pierre with an agenda. It's not about me. It's really about you.
All right, BJ, as a candidate, why are you different from everyone else?
Well, I'm a working class person, and I'm standing up for the working class people, being their voice, knowing what we want and what to fight for, better life for our families, to be their leader, and actually hear their concerns and their issues. Thanks.
All right, Brian, as a candidate, why are you different from everyone else?
I'm here, it's just me. I'm an independent. I'm independent running as an independent. I believe in this state. I've lived here my whole life. I love everybody here. I want the best for my community. I want the best for my state. I want to give people a choice of a person who stands up for them, who knows what it's like you said, to work paycheck to paycheck and, think about what it costs to raise a family in this state. Thanks.
All right, Chris, as a candidate, why are you different from everyone else?
I like serving people in Pierre because I think of myself as a mom first and foremost, and that really boils down into every aspect of life. I've enjoyed raising my kids and now my grandchild and the education that comes in that. I've also served in leadership in the House and the Senate, and have often been referred to as the mom, as the one that's guiding people and trying to help them get through their day, because as you know, it's a new job for most of us out there, or a new set of people to get along with. I enjoy hearing from my constituents and their emails. I love seeing you when you come to Pierre. I encourage you all to do that. Kim does a great job with the Brandon Chamber. They come and visit us every year, and it is really a great time to see you and to have you participate in the process. Everything that we do is open and online. You can come to any meetings that we have. You can participate. You can also watch us every day on our floor sessions. I get a text from my mom every day either saying that I look good or I better change my outfit for the next time. So I know that she's watching me. So the more engaged that you can get, the better off it does. It helps us. It helps us know that you're watching and that we can represent you the very best. So I would appreciate your support. Thanks for being here.
All right, Peter, as a candidate, why are you different from everyone else?
Well, I'm not independently wealthy either, but I'd like to be if you guys have any suggestions. But I don't think being in the legislature is the way to get there. I think we've got some serious issues that face us as the tariffs rise and the sale of corn and soy drops. Sales tax revenue is likely to take a serious hit. We need to be looking at that, not passing potty bills and Muslim bans and all that other crap that goes through the legislature. I think we need to take stuff seriously. I take serving and protecting seriously. And I believe that public service is supposed to serve the public. And so that's what I want to go do. I don't want to do it for a long time. Somebody asked me, why do you want to run? And my answer was, well, they don't. But given what's going on, I think I have to. So I am. And I'm hoping enough people believe that what I want to do is the right thing and will put me in office. Hopefully for 2 years we can start straightening things out. I believe in Billy Sutton, and I think he can do a great job, and I think he needs to have a non-supermajority of Republicans in the legislature so that he can accomplish what he wishes to accomplish. And I'd like to support him in that.
All right, well, that concludes our questions from the audience. So with 15 minutes remaining and 2 minutes each, if you can do the math, we're about right on time to do our closing statements, and we will start with John Hanson first.
All right, well, thanks again, Kim, for moderating, and thanks a lot for having us, and thanks for coming out here tonight. I will confess I had a difficult time answering that last question, and it's probably because I don't think in those terms. I don't think in terms of division. I think in terms of bringing people together. I think that's what's important in our state legislature. I think that's what's important in our small communities. And when you think back over the last couple weeks or 3 weeks, however long it's been now, and you look at the national news and you think of what happened with the Supreme Court nominee, I don't care what party you belong to, that's not our highest ideal. That's not what we want in our communities. This is kind of what we want, just to sit down and have a conversation. So we can disagree, and that's fine. We're going to have disagreements. There's big issues we got to deal with. We're going to have disagreements. But let's just have a conversation about it. Let's not send out nasty things or say nasty things or get in big screaming fights. We just don't need that in our small towns in South Dakota. So I'll do everything I can to stand against that here in South Dakota and in our little towns. I've talked a lot about my principles and what I believe tonight, so I just want to let you know that I'll always be accessible. I don't care what party you belong to. If I'm your representative, I'm gonna listen to your concerns and take your issues to heart, and we'll have a conversation about it. So, my cell phone number is 261-3620. You can call me whenever. I've got a website, johnhansonforhouse.com. That's got my contact information on it. You can look me up there too. Or, after 10 o'clock Mass every Sunday, I'll probably be at the Pizza Ranch. So you can find me there too. So appreciate you being here, and I would ask for your vote on November 6th. Thanks.
All right, Dan, closing statement.
Well, thank you, Kim. Thank you, Brandon Chamber of Commerce and the City of Brandon for hosting this event. It's been a pleasure and an honor to serve the last couple of years. I hope I have the opportunity to continue to serve for the next 2 years for District 25. My approach has been a reasoned approach to politics. I like to serve the people of this district. I've enjoyed all of the emails and phone calls and visits to my business. We've done a lot of good things together and passed a lot of good legislation the last couple of years, thanks in part to your involvement and your interaction with me. And that has happened in a bipartisan manner. We've worked very hard together, Republicans and Democrats, to get things done. I like to foster that type of environment in Pierre. Hopefully, if I return, I'll be in a leadership position to continue that and help benefit the people of District 25.
All right, thank you. BJ, closing statement.
I just want to thanks for having me out here tonight. I'd just like to say, being a unionist for about 30 years, I've seen little changes in wages and job safety and security. I want to be the voice for the working class people, to push for wages afforded by health care and job safety. The working class people deserve better. And I want to be the voice to ask tough questions, to challenge why we can't do better or be better, to provide a good life for our families. Thank you.
All right, closing statement. Brian.
Thank you, Kim. Thanks for hosting. I just would like to give people the opportunity to vote based on policy issues and not on buzzwords or rhetoric or party lines. I agree with John. I don't think watching cable news is healthy. Not that you said that, but a lot of it on there is just trying to get people whipped up into a frenzy and fight with each other, when if you go next door and you talk to your neighbor, you find out that you agree on a lot of things. And we can work together and we can get those things done. Thank you.
All right, Chris, closing statement.
Thank you. Once again, I agree with a lot that's being said, and I've enjoyed serving you in the House and the last couple of years in the Senate, and hope to come back and work for you hard again. I need a little bit of rebuttal to my first statement about marijuana. I did have recreational marijuana in my head, so I would agree that with medical marijuana, if we could find a way to make sure that those that are in pain and in need that, I would be open to some legislation as far as that goes as well. But just as some have said about working together and listening to you, I think that's a big part of, I think you've, in my opinion, District 25 has been very blessed with the representation that we've had. And we do work well together. We've passed several bills together and worked on several constituent issues that really impact our district. And so that's a very good thing that we can do. Just encourage you to keep contacting and staying involved and knowing what the process is and That's really what we need. We need you to tell us what you want, what we need from you, and we love to see your faces in Pierre. So not that you need to necessarily travel out there to stay engaged. Like I said, you can watch every day on TV, you can watch online, or you can listen even in the car. You might get, or if you need to fall asleep at night, you can listen to one of our committees, because sometimes they're not very interesting. But that being said, the more involved that you can be, the better off. So I would appreciate your vote to go back and continue to serve you in Pierre. Thank you.
All right, and nope, we actually have two left. I'm sorry. Peter, closing statement.
Yeah, let's not cut off Tom. Thank you, Brandon, for having us. We appreciate the opportunity. This is my first one of these ever. I hope I pass. We're coming up on serious times, and it's going to take some serious people to take a look at what's going on. I don't know everything, but I know how to find out most things. I've sat with the sheriff. I've sat with the head of the patrol. I've sat with the head of the Associated School Boards and asked questions to get from the experts what their opinion of the issues are and what good ways to solve them are. And I think that's what we need. We need to not go in there with our predetermined positions on, we hate taxes. Everybody hates taxes, but sometimes they're necessary, although have no immediate intentions of raising taxes. Everybody's for life. Nobody's for abortion. But there are ways to solve problems that need to be thoroughly looked at, researched, and experts need to be consulted. And I've always been able to pull that off. I can usually find some fairly interesting and creative solutions to problems that make everybody happy. I've sold over $1 billion worth of things in my life by being able to do that, and I'd like to try to do that with government. And I hope I can get support of our people. Thank you.
All right, and Tom, closing statement.
Thank you, Kim, and I want to thank you and the Brandon Chamber for hosting us tonight, and it was a very enjoyable experience. I want to piggyback on a couple things I've missed in my introduction. My girlfriend Lisa and I, we've lived together, we've been in a relationship together for the last 3.5 years. Between the two of us, we have 4 kids together, so I do have a family life and all that kind of good stuff. As a legislator, I serve on the Ag and Natural Resources Committee and also on the Commerce Committee. So look forward to doing that again if so elected. Originally from Corsica, South Dakota, if you know where that is, and then graduated there in 2000, and then I went to Dakota State University in Madison and graduated there in 2004. So if you do the math, I'm about 36 years old. As a legislator, I always made it a point to always respond to emails and calls, especially from voters within the district. Love to have those conversations. Even if we disagree, at least want to respond and let you know where I am on the issue, why I voted a certain way, and that kind of stuff. So, if elected, I'd be honored to serve again and represent the people of District 25 and the people of South Dakota. And yeah, that's it. That's how I usually end my speeches too.
Well, thank you all so much for coming here tonight. We greatly appreciate it. I want to thank the Brandon Valley Area Chamber of Commerce and the Brandon Valley Journal for sponsoring tonight's forum. Remember to tell your friends and your neighbors who could not be here tonight to tune in to Alliance Communications local channel at 6 p.m. on Saturday, October 20th, and or Sunday, October 21st, again at 6 p.m. If you want to see these guys live again, they're doing another performance on Monday, correct? At the Del Rapids Public School. Is it at the high school? Elementary school. So you go up to Del Rapids to the elementary school. What time? Anyone? Thank you. 6:30. Same times as ours was. We will also be posting this video on the Brandon Valley Chamber's YouTube channel. Give me till Thursday, please. But I will get that up there. And then please remember to vote on Tuesday, November 6th. Good luck to each of the candidates, and thanks to all for attending tonight's forum. Good night.